On the night of the 20th of October 2020, members of the Nigerian Army opened fire at unarmed NSAS protesters at the Lekki toll gate. Amnesty International has said in that incident, 12 people were killed. Some members of the Nigerian populace have said that number was way too low than the people who were actually shot at and killed. The international human rights organizations have also come out to say that number is left to be debated. A panel has since been set up to look into the killing, and at the end of that panel sitting, it was said that that incident produced what is now a debated massacre. My name is Marshall Anthony Onoye. This is We the People on Nwafolive. Welcome. Welcome once again. This is We the People. On today's episode of We the People, we would be looking at the NSAS protest and the Lekki toll gate killing. In my introduction, I did say that members of the Nigerian Army opened fire on the 20th of 2020 of October. They opened fire on armed members of the public who were protesting in a protest that has popularly come to be known as End SARS. And today, in our commemorative episode of that End SARS protest, we will be talking about the killing, the aftermath of that killing, and who else to do justice to the discussion regarding the End SARS protest and the Lekki toll gate killing. But Barrister Evans Ufeli, Barrister, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Barrister is as a human rights advocate, a public policy analyst. He's also a broadcast professional. And of course, by the word barrister, the title barrister, you know he is a legal practitioner. And you've been advocating for justice to be served for those who were killed at the Lekki toll gate. Before we go into discussing the aftermath of the killing, tell us, did you play any part in the NSAS protest, or were you even at the forefront of the Lekki toll gate protest?
Yes, I was at the protest ground on that day. I mean, days before that day and on that day.
Wow. I
only left the scene that day around 2 o'clock because I had to go back to the court. And I was held back with the client up to about 7 o'clock or thereabouts before the action took place. We heard a lot of noise, pandemonium, gunshot. Okay, these gunshots were targeted at the protesters. They were not gunshots that were shot somewhere else at the air or anywhere. It was targeted at the protesters, and they were soldiers of the Nigerian Army who opened fire on these armless protesters, people who, by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, have the fundamental rights of assemblage and protest, which is part of democracy. Okay, but it turned out to be a bloody one because we have the government that have no respect for the Constitution they swore to uphold. They have no respect for the citizens they are meant to lead and govern. They have no respect for international communities, international organizations, both here and outside the country, and they have no respect for anybody. So they could carry out such actions and then do whatever they wish against the citizens who had just a demand. Okay, end SARS, because the SARS have become a subject matter of brutality, of abuse, of harassment, of killing, of all kinds of deaths hardly will you find a family that have no history of brutality in the Nigerian circle, and which is attributed to
The SARS.
SARS.
And the SARS being the Special Anti-Robbery Squad.
Special Anti-Robbery Squad that was created some time ago in the past to wage war against highway robbers. That was exactly, it was just a unit of the police force. It outlived its usefulness. It became a monster under the watch of the Nigerian government. It started eating deep into the fabrics of our nation's solidarity, eroded the rights of Nigerians. At some point, it became a criminal conspiracy. At some point, they encroach, they pull out from their jurisdiction, and they start chasing people. Anybody they find with a laptop, anybody they find that is driving a good car, anybody or anyone or group of persons they see that are reasonably comfortable, those persons are suspects. I mean, these are policemen who are surprised that Nigerian citizens are comfortable, okay, because of their own lifestyle. And then they have used that arm of the police to do a lot of havoc in this society, to kill people extrajudicially. And then it got to a point where Nigerians said, no, enough is enough. They came out at the Lekki toll gate, shut down movement. The protest was both in Ikeja and at Lekki, area of Lagos State, and it was one voice. The people had one voice. The protest was organic because it has no leader. There was no leader. Anybody that claimed to have been one of the leaders is a waste of time, because I mean, we were all there. The Nigeria of our dream happened at the NSAS protest. The moment you step into the NSAS protest, somebody will call on you to take food pack. Somebody will give you drink. If you have issues, there were standby medics. Okay, where all kinds of the entertainment, music, that utopia that the average Nigerian had always yearned for happened within a week. In this, the day we knew that the protest has encroached on the precept of divinity was the day when, on a Friday, the Muslims were praying and the Christians gathered around them to protect them from their
intruders.
Yes, intruders. And on a Sunday, the same thing happened. Okay, so people slept on the protest ground without any fear. Okay. As huge as that crowd, there was never a case of a stolen phone, a stolen biro, a stolen shoe, or stolen anything. Nigerians were unified in one front, and we birthed a new kind of Nigeria in 1 week. That Nigeria, I'm not sure we can reclaim. For what the federal government did, ordered the soldiers, and they got on. And after all that, the international communities, I mean, people were rescued, some taken to the hospital. Even the governor of Lagos visited some persons at the hospital. Some of the persons he visited at the hospital died thereafter. But till today, they still claim that nobody died at the Lekki toll gate. So it tells you that it's an insensitive government, a government that does not believe in the rights of the youth to aspire. Okay, so it's a government that have no faith in what the younger generation can become in the context of the 21st century.
Okay, before we go into full throttle of the crux of the discussion, which is actually what NSAS portend, because I wanted to pick brains on your own individual participation at the protest, and you said you were there at the forefront. You saw members of the Nigerian army open fire, and to your own understanding, the fire wasn't a warning shot. It wasn't to disperse a crowd. It was aimed at Nigerians who were not holding arms, who were not even agitating towards the Nigerian army. It was intended to kill the protesters, you say?
Yes.
How did you escape that crossfire, or will I say fire?
Yes, what happened was I had left around 2 o'clock.
Okay.
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 So I was in court. After I finished with my client,
I see.
I was on my way
Back to that
protest
protest.
when I saw people
Running now.
towards us. I mean, 2, 3 of us. Some persons were running towards us, and there were gunshots. And people were shouting that they've killed that one, they've killed this one, they've killed this person. This boy just fell, this one, and all that. Some persons were trying to rescue them. People were running. There was a pandemonium. I mean, the entire place was aghast. People were jumping into the lagoon. Okay, people were looking for finding a way of escape. So a lot happened within that short period. A lot of things happened. There was a lot of stampede too and all that. But even one of the TV station, one of the reporters was there just minutes after that happened. And we saw live ammunitions that were used, okay? And there were blood stains. There were people who were shot dead, who the armies picked their body up. Okay, we had blood stain, we have evidence were erased immediately, some persons were killed. Okay, so now this idea that nobody died cannot be sustained because the truth will remain the truth, no matter how you try to repress it.
Because I was going to get to that. Amnesty International said 12.
Yes.
Some persons, some Nigerians had said, some other people in defense of those who had said nobody was killed. In fact, let's even take it a step backwards. First off, the Nigerian army had come out to say none of their men were there. So no shot was fired, no Nigerian army presence was recorded, according to them. Then later on, the governor also came out to say no order was given for the army to set out. So he was sure and saying to the people, days after that killing, he came out to say, look, the army wasn't given an order to come out. And then later on, when evidence started coming on from online media and other conventional media, we began to see the army, backtrack on its earlier claim that its men were in there, to say they came, but they shot rubber bullets.
They said it was the governor that invited them.
The governor invited them.
Yes.
And when it was time to disperse the crowd, they shot, they didn't shoot live ammunition. Yes. They shot rubber bullets.
Yes, that is what they told me.
On and on, front and back, until when the panel was set up to look into how to make amends or mend the wounds, and then also pay some kind of compensation to those who were affected. The panel came out and said it was a massacre.
Yes.
That gave birth to the debate whether or not it was a massacre. Do you think it was a massacre?
It was a massacre, I believe so, because at the NSAS panel, I was there too. I represented one person who was involved in police brutality before the NSAS and one during the NSAS. Okay, so I was there throughout. And even the day the army came to testify, I was there. They said they were invited by the governor. The governor had earlier on said he did not invite them. So before now, they said they were never there. When evidence, they came up to the NSAS panel. After some time, they stopped coming. When they were to give evidence, they stopped coming. Okay, so the petitioner continued with his case, and all the exhibits were tendered to that effect, video recording and all that. And this video recording was subjected to forensic analysis. And they were all certified to be video that emanated from the protest ground. And then the outcomes. Now, if for Amnesty to even say there are 12 persons, that may be based on their own investigation. Of course, they cannot go outside their own investigation. But the truth is that the persons who came out to say that their loved ones are missing as a result of the NSAS protests are more than 12. And then what it means is that we have more than 12 persons who were actually killed. We may not have the certainty as to the number, but we know that there were more than 12 persons that were killed. I believe it's a massacre. And the father, some persons were compensated on police brutality and all that, but the crux of the matter, the one that has to do with the NSAS itself, which necessitated, of course, there have been brutality before that time, and some persons were compensated. But the one that has to do with the project itself, the state government, okay, that set up the panel that indicted
itself,
the same government, have not given compensation, have not apologized to Nigerians, have not done anything to ameliorate the
plight of those who were affected.
Of those who were affected, and those who were not directly affected, but those who were traumatized as a result of the outcome. I know people today who are still going through post-traumatic experience emanating from the protests.
I see.
If you go to one of the network media that posted a video I did on this same issue, when you go to the comment section, you will see people dissipating a lot of traumatic experience that's the outcome of this.
Okay, we'll talk about the video because you've been on the front line, you've advocating for compensation and the right thing to be done, implementation of the recommendations coming from the panel. But let's talk about the claims by some people that the morning after the shooting, that the Nigerian army sent men to evacuate bodies from the streets, supposedly or allegedly bodies of those who were killed. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I don't think what they went to do the next morning was to wipe off the place. They picked the bodies immediately. Those bodies were shot because people had to run away. So they were advancing. It was like a war situation. While the people were retreating, the army kept advancing and shooting. So they were picking the bodies as they were shooting. That is what happened. And if you look at the video that was done by DJ Switch, if you watch that video very well, you will see that some of the persons who got gunshot injuries, shot at the leg, at the limb and all that were quickly rescued. You will see all that. Okay, it is not everyone that was so lucky to have sustained injury in places like the leg or the limb that they could survive. Some persons sustained injury in very wrong areas of the body and they died instantly.
Let's take a look at the video which you created. Evans Ofeli, barrister, has been on the front line advocating for the implementations rising from the NSAS panel and the recommendations from there as well. Let's take a look at this video which he made to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the NSAS Lekki Toll Gate killing.
This story was made here of sacrifice, blood, sand, pain, that night of anguish and trepidation, with courage to crush injustice, a resolve to end SARS. We remember that night. This story was made here on this soil, this floor, this gate, this blood, this stool, with blood dripping down my chin. I wrote myself into tears, citizens rolling on the floor, screaming, weeping, bleeding, dying, and still. This story was made here of sacrifice, blood, sand, and pain. That night of anguish and trepidation, with courage to crush injustice, a resolve to end SARS, we remember that night. This story was made here. We raised our voices from the void, stretching through the hallowed grim, proclaiming our faith on a nationhood, soldiers hearing the nation's anthem, shooting at us through the eyes of darkness, bullet piercing beneath our flesh, citizens dropping on the earth, comrades screaming in pain, and death falling on fear. This story was made here of sacrifice, blood, sand, and pain. That night of anguish and trepidation, with courage to crush injustice, a resolve to end SARS. We remember that night. This story was made here. They killed and picked bodies, stuck flesh to flesh and blood to blood. Our comrades, heroes, patriots who shared food and drank water with us a while ago, forced into Elysium, waving the flag of sovereign, dragging her best to death. This story was made here of sacrifice, blood, sand, pain, that night of anguish and trepidation, a courage to crush injustice, a resolve to end SARS. We remember that night. This story was made here The days we slept out on this spot, singing to the promise, crafting the symphony of generational shift, dropping the garment of hostile struggle in ethnicity, embracing a new civilization wrapped in the fountain of unity. That night, this is the story. This story was made here of sacrifice, blood, sand, and pain. That night of anguish and trepidation, with courage to crush injustice, a resolve to end SARS, we remember that night.
Welcome back. Well, you have that poetic material put up by Evans Nwafolive, who's an advocate for justice to be served on behalf of those whose lives were affected during the Lekki Toll Gate killing. Evans Nwafolive is our guest in the studio, and together we're looking at that NSAS October 20th, 2020, when unarmed Nigerians were shot at by members of the Nigerian army. Amnesty International says 12 people were killed. A panel has defined that killing as a massacre. Evans, the panel actually gave about 32 recommendations, amongst which was to do away with the toll at the Lekki Toll Gate, create, for lack of a better word, a mausoleum, or if you may, something in remembrance of those who were victims of the killings. But out of the 32 recommendations by the panel, the Lagos State government, which set up the panel as well, took only 11. You had earlier said that was an indictment on even the government who had set up a panel, believing that this panel is credible enough to make recommendations. Yes. What would you say, or how would you say the fact of Lagos State government taking only 11 met you or greeted you?
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate because the government took it like a pinch of salt. The government have not seen it as grievous enough to do the right thing, to make sure that not only that the victims are remembered, but their families and loved ones are well taken care of. The government have not found that necessary. And that's because we're talking about a government that disrespects her citizens. In some other places, when errors like these are made, because I see it as an error, the error of the sovereign. The sovereign, have subjected itself to contents, murderous contents, disregarding human rights. I mean, in international conflict, there are certain things that are meant to be done under the international humanitarian law, and that is to ensure that anytime you have soldiers out there, it must be soldiers facing soldiers, or soldiers facing rebels who are armed. It must be soldiers facing
territorial enemies.
Yes, that is the essence of keeping to protect the territorial integrity of the country, so that it's not overrun by criminals. But here we're talking about protesters who, under a democratic dispensation, have a right to assemble and right to protest, to express their grievances over the issues of their welfare and the governance. So the recommendations, instead of the government to look at it, the government started looking at faults, looking at errors, that the names of some persons were duplicated, that some of the persons who had just one name, no surname, and all that. I mean, it is, for me, it's not the issue. The main issue should have been focused on how to ameliorate the harm caused already, and how to give the people hope for a better future.
All right. Now, the NSAS protest eventually snowballed into end bad governance, because several persons went up to several government institutions like the office of the IG. Some members were selected, amongst which notably was Davido, the entertainer, and he tabled about 5 or 6 items on the agenda, and one of them was amongst them were to end SARS, to disband SARS, to ensure that the police, members of the police force were retrained, and then to ensure that their salaries and emoluments and remunerations were looked into with a view to reviewing them upwards and all. And somewhere in all of that was end bad governance, the way that people were being treated and all of that, beyond police brutality, beyond violation of human rights. Even President Muhammadu Buhari at some time, referring to the NSAS protesters, said some rascals were coming to topple or take over his government, as if he was talking about some coup plotters. What would you say about bad governance? NSAS has to do with bad governance, leaving away police brutality and all of that.
Yeah, I know I'm going to be very honest with this. My analysis are always very honest, and sometimes they are not popular. What I'm going to say now is not popular. After the federal government had spoken to the NSAS protester and had promised to disband it, okay, that's after the police went to create one SWAT something. The 2 days after, the protest now snowballed into people started calling for regime change.
Okay.
I was there.
I see.
When they started calling for regime change. And that is when the federal government brought the soldiers. Because if you listen to the president said that the NSAS hotel was an attempt to remove him.
To topple his government.
Yes, to remove him from office. He said that even at a national broadcast. After that, he made that statement. So the government from the outset misunderstood the protest. Okay, misunderstood the protest. There is only one way, okay, recognized by law through which the president of a country will leave office. Okay, it is spelled out in the law. It's spelled out in the law that by impeachment, death, election, and all that. It's spelled out in the law, and that is the way. Any other way is treasonable. Okay, so even if they were calling for regime change, or the government, the answer is not to shoot. Okay, there was no war. This person calling for regime change had no arms. They were not secessionists. Okay, they were just citizens who were angry. All you needed to do was to guide them and then listen to them. That's all you needed to do. It is out of place completely to take arms against innocent citizens.
So the part the NSAS gave birth to end bad governance was after it appeared the government wanted to change.
Government has disbanded SARS.
Okay, but the
protests continued because the trails of indiscipline we've had and the pains of the average Nigerian, okay, they wanted to use the protest to address more issues. Because having succeeded with that of SARS, they felt perhaps if they go further to say, okay, end corruption, end bad governance, and they started calling for regime change. You understand? Because as at the time and up till now, the current government wasn't doing well. It's not still doing well.
You mean the governor of Lagos State?
The current Nigerian government,
okay.
State government,
okay,
they weren't doing well. Okay, it's a government that the energy of the youths, this government don't know what to do with it. There are a lot of countries where they have aged population. In Canada and some places they have aged population. They wish they had youth population. Because that is where the energy and power is. Okay? But here, our government, they don't know what to do with it. So I think that also led to the fear. They were very apprehensive. Not only were they apprehensive, the economic fortune of some of the bourgeois of Lagos State were threatened. Protesters went to some establishment. That's at the point when it was hijacked, because what happened was that the middle class and sub-middle class youths who started the protests were unable to communicate effectively to the touts and thugs. Yeah, there was a disconnect.
Okay.
Those who first started the protests were middle class, sub-middle class youths that understood exactly what the protest was about. They were the ones who had drones. They were the ones who had the right equipment. They were the ones who were communicating with some international persons. They were the ones who connected through technology for the funding through Bitcoin and all that, funding the protest and organizing it. So at the background were touts who came there to either hijack it or wait for it to deteriorate so that they can take over. Okay, those ones, the middle class and sub-middle class youth could not really communicate to let them know what it's about.
Okay.
Those ones came out, and then we had a breakdown of law and order.
Let me quickly ask you, because we're running out of time. As we wind down, the NSAS has come. It will only remain a thing of reflection when we want to talk about bad governance and police brutality. But in all of that, we saw the energy that came with it. And here we are just days away to the 2023 general elections. How do you think that the NSAS and the energy that it came with what do you think it will portend for the 2023 general election, given that this administration and its players are still strongly in the race for the 2023 general elections?
Yes, I think it will play a role. It will influence decision to some extent. There are people who are still very passionate about that outing, the NSAS outing, and they intend to carry that passion to the ballots this time around, But my fear about the political scenario of the Nigerian state is, when it is infiltrated by politicians who will bring, so in some of the elections we had, on election days like a market square, so many persons came to buy vote and so many persons came to sell. So it turns to a market. So that is the only fear. If not, if the people will be disciplined enough and then imbibe the NSAS spirit, it's going to be a walkover. It's going to be the people's choice that we made. Because the NSAS people I know are people who will vote and not go home. Are people who will be ready to be shot and they will not leave the place until they get the right thing done.
I would have asked your final words, but I'll take these ones as your final words as we go on this show. I think we can leave it there. Evans Nwafolive, I want to say that we admire you and your advocacy. Keep the flag flying. That's the much we can say. And we also want to say thank you very much for answering our call to be our guest on the show today.
Thank you.
God bless you. And to our viewers, there you have it. Evans Nwafolive is a human rights advocate. He's a legal practitioner. He is also on the front line for advocating for compensation for those who lost their lives in the NSAS protest and the Lekki toll gate shooting, especially for the government to do something to ameliorate the plight of the family members of those who lost their lives, and also to see that the recommendations of the panel set up by the Lagos State government post the NSAS Lekki toll gate shooting is fully implemented. Well, there you have it. That's how we go on today's episode. Would like you to join us same time next week as we bring you another interesting episode. Remember to click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to this channel. It's Nwafolive, and also share our videos. We'd like to hear from you. What would you like to see us or hear us talk about on this show, We the People? Remember, it's all about the people. Whatever it is that affects the people, we will be here to bring you all the sides and all the facts. My name is Marshall Anthony Onoye. God bless you.